Space of Becoming is a unique international performance that invites people from different ages not only to learn history, but above all to experience it. And in this project, Docs and Sites of Memory collaborate with leading companies such as nATANDA Dance Theatre from Sri Lanka and Jazz Art Dance Theatre South Africa. And today we have Kapila, and I'm gonna say it correct, Palihawadana, right? And we have Luc de Kock. Kapila is from Sri Lanka, Luc de Kock is from South Africa, and of course we have Jennifer Tosch from the Netherlands,
Nice.
in a way.
No, you can say it.
It is.
It is.
It is.
I'm Dutch.
So, Space of Becoming is performing from September the 26th until the 11th of October in Utrecht, Amsterdam, Maastricht, and Rotterdam. The performance explores the intertwined colonial histories of the Netherlands, South Africa, and Sri Lanka, making them tangible for a wide audience. And they call it site-specific theater. Or it's a theatrical walk past different locations, but actually the audience are immersed in a dynamic mix of dance, spoken word, music, and installation art. So today we're having a talk with, may I say, 3 big impact makers. You are artists, storytellers, right? You do have the spices within you already, but it's about the journey. It's about really telling stories that aren't really there yet, and therefore you are like pioneers in that, may I say. I'll start with you, Jennifer. Can you introduce
I defy description,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
I don't know, because you have a very long CV. You are a co-founder of Sites of Memory
Yes.
and research director,
Yeah.
cultural historian, Black Heritage Tours. Also,
Yes. Well, that's it. That's my
No,
story.
that's not it.
No. Well,
So-
maybe a little backstory that will give context. I was born in the U.S., in New York. The first generation of my parents were from Suriname. My ancestors from Suriname. I've traced my ancestry 7 generations, so I know the first Tosch, if you will, that was born in Suriname. I've lived in the Netherlands now for 14 years. You've already said, as a cultural historian, also the co-founder with Katie Streek, who's a theater maker, and I, as a historian, we make history-themed theater, site-specific history-themed theater for the last 10 years. And the Black Heritage Tour started in 2013. And so these 2 things came together rather naturally. Katie and I were working in the same office, and she then was a programmer for Afro Vibes, and they would do the Black Heritage Tour. And she came to me and said, it would be really interesting to add performance, because it is performative in a way, and storytelling. And we got an invitation from the theater school. That was the first one that we did 10 years ago. And the rest, we've made a lot of history together.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you made history by telling history.
That's right.
That's right. Jennifer Tosch, everybody, and now you hear applause. Okay.
Yes.
And next to Jennifer, we have Kapila Palihawadana from Sri Lanka. Did I say it right?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for giving this opportunity, and this is a golden opportunity for an artist coming from Sri Lanka. And I think before, I just wanted to give something, a bit of my background. I was a traditional dancer, so I studied at the University of Sri Lankan traditional dance forms. Then I moved into like a classical ballet. After that, I moved into Germany to get the higher studies of contemporary dance. Then I went back to Sri Lanka, then started this dance company called nATANDA. That's Sri Lanka's first and only professional dance company at the moment. And we are also organizing Sri Lanka's contemporary dance festival called NatFest. We have been doing it 4 times in Sri Lanka before the corona. And then the last year we just started in a smaller scale to see how it goes. And today here I'm to do some collaborative work with the docs. And then especially thanks goes to Katie. So inviting me for this wonderful opportunity, and I got to know wonderful Jennifer Tosch, and then also Luc. We have been so much engaged in this whole process of like how Sri Lankan history has been in the colonizations, how it has also like effect on our daily life. And we are sitting here with the history. We are the history, and we feel like we have a lot to share with our stories in this journey. And this is a beautiful collaborative work that I was invited to do. I think it is also really important for Sri Lanka to go back to your history and sort of like look in what has happened, what is going to be happening also in the future related to the history. So and it's so wonderful, and the weather is great now.
Now it is.
Because we come from a very hot country, and then here is cooler. It's like a global warming is happening more in Sri Lanka now. So I find it's a bit cooling here, and also quite like a challenging. And we found a wonderful dancers here. They are so dedicated of their theme of this idea of space of becoming, how it also affect on their personal life. Because I'm sharing my personal life and personal stories with them, how we have been colonized and how has that effect on our daily life.
Right.
It's never ending.
Never
so it's
ending.
a beautiful way of like putting all the stories into this beautiful performance.
And we'll come back to that. Let's introduce Luke first. Thank you. Hi, Luke.
Hi. So my name is Luke de Kock. I'm a choreographer, filmmaker, director, and performing artist from Cape Town, South Africa. I originally from jazz or dance theater, so I trained back a few years back. We're not going to say how far back, but quite some time ago. And I think over the past few years, I started my own company called Camissa Create, also focusing on historical narrative works, site-specific works, working with museums. My first encounter with Sites of Memory was in 2020. So I've worked with Sites of Memory before on an international project with some artists that we're getting an opportunity now to continue that relationship and journey to grow together. So I'm very excited to finally be in this new process, space of becoming, so that we can make an impact.
So in short, what can we expect? Because 3 locations all over the world, we do have similarities. We have connection already. Let's talk about the connection first. Like for people that don't know, why South Africa and Sri Lanka and the Netherlands, Jennifer?
Well, maybe it's good to think about over the last 10 years, what we've tried to do at Sites of Memory is to amplify and to make more visible the hidden stories, the less known. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't know about these intertwined histories that connect these 3 countries and continents. I think that's part of the foundation of what we do. And every season that we look at for the future, what's our next project, we try to push ourselves, the boundaries of where we were. We had a beautiful residency in South Africa that we collaborated with Luke. And it just revealed that when we travel, when we take these histories outside of one place and move it to the site of trauma or where the colonial system really developed, that it changes the story. That it also gives us an opportunity to look at how language impacts that, how culture was impacted, how the movements between spaces and places impact that. So this project, we thought, well, what hasn't been explored? A lot of people know about Indonesia and the colonial period, especially over the last 10, 15 years. New research has revealed that. But Sri Lanka was still somewhat in the shadows.
Right.
It's something that a lot of people in the Netherlands had no idea that, of course we talk about India even, but Sri Lanka was just this little island off the coast, didn't get attention. So that was already something that we thought, let's collaborate with Sri Lanka and develop it. And of course, because of the movements, you cannot talk about Sri Lanka without also talking about South Africa. So that then created the bridge to South Africa, and here in the Netherlands was empire.
Right.
Here's where the colonial system was structured, was managed, the decisions were made, the financial structures were established, the capitalist system. So therein lies the transnational connections.
Right. And how, because you're both like dancers, choreographers, makers, so you have to translate all of this information into movement. And you have to collaborate in between, like not only towards the audience, but also 3 different continents. How do you do that? Like
Very carefully. No.
and it's a complex team, so you have a lot of complex.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I think we've obviously have quite an advantage and a privilege to take this process through development, through research. We're picking this back up in September, leading up to the performance in October. So this period really creates some sort of an incubation where we can get to know one another, get to share the stories, get to go on some history tours, share some of the historical findings that's come out of the process, and have conversation. How does it make you feel? What are your experiences? How can we, how can we find the commonalities? Who are the key figures within this history that we can bring up into the light? Key figures that's been to Sri Lanka, that's been to South Africa, that's been to the Netherlands, so that we can show this interconnectivity of this history through those key figures as well.
And still you have to perform it. So how do you perform it? You don't only use words, you use physical movement
and language.
Music.
I think as Luke said, we go through with the process of understanding the research. And that gives a sort of brain power to imagine, although you were not in that positions. So when we are here, we are the part of the history. The way we talk, the way we move, it is all depend on this, this period, because our ancestors were there. And then we come from the generation to generation, and that feeling, that emotions, that togetherness, or whatever the emotions that you have within the human being, it won't change. It goes from your parents to your children to children to children. It goes like that. It's a journey. So that journey is we are bringing here to Netherlands with the South Africa and Sri Lanka, and we are sharing that with these amazing dancers here. Then they hear from us. It is not like you're reading a book. It is actually you're hearing the story from the real person. That makes the biggest sense. And also it makes the creations more powerful, more dynamic. And then understanding about my breathing, about my suffering, about my betrayal, about whatever the things that I have gone through. I'm talking through those experiences. These experiences like really creating a camouflage for the dancers to come up with their own emotional feeling, to listen to that and understand that. That creates a completely different dimension and the different body language for our creation. And we didn't know that when we started this, and yesterday we had the training, and then we gave all the stories we talk, and some of the dancers were crying because they really felt what has happened, and then how we have affected on that, how the journey has been going through up to now, and it will never stop. I'm sorry to say this, but this is what exactly is the whole story about. As a makers, we try to find that stories, how we can navigate through our body, and to let someone to understand this is what has happened. So we are creating a dialogue through our body movements. This is what is.
I think that language also plays a very important part in this process. We just had a conversation with some of the interns before this talk, and everyone that comes to the creative process brings their stories, brings their ancestral memories, brings their collective cultural heritage, and all of that is material. So what we encourage is that this is not going to be a one language, one story. It's many stories that come together to try to tell an impossible story, which is how do you bring these 3 histories into a performance that's going to last less than an hour.
Right.
We start off with a 20-page document that's historical, document that took me, weeks to construct, because I'm trying to weave together histories of 3 different countries that have parallel histories, but also very specific. And then you have some fragments of people's individual stories, but not the whole story. And how then do you create a script that tells the story using just pieces of it. So it's complicated, and it takes building this relationship has been great and really exciting. And I think for me that's been part of the process, just getting to know each other,
getting to know each other and each other's perspective on the same theme. Actually, and then you need to communicate it with each other. So the process of the making and the research, that's one.
Yeah.
And now you have to communicate this to the audience.
Yeah.
Because what you feel and you experience, because you are communicators, how do you make it possible in order to the audience and even the young audience to feel it really?
Yeah.
What's your experience with that?
I think for me, like, it's really important, like, why this research development incubation period is so pivotal to process, that it doesn't get rushed, so that we are able to take this information, this history, to reflect on it, and then to create these exercises and workshops. How can we translate what we know now as information and bring it into the body? So we create some exercises, we create some moments of improvisation. We all obviously have our own, with writing as well, but we have our own, like you have your Sri Lankan techniques, practices. Myself, I have my own approach through how I create. So you bring your own stamp through choreography, but also to open up that language within the process that is real and honest. That creates a collective, a new language.
Right.
You know, so you're merging this South Africa, Sri Lanka, but also some artists from here that also are from different other parts of the world. And it all creates this new language, which I think movement, dance really is such a beautiful way to create this communication as well through the body for people to get the message at the end of the day as an audience.
Because you can mirror, right? It's like emotions and body language that's universal. It's not really is it really? Well, this is a question. So for culture and people and history in which you have these traumas, and not in all countries you have the same trauma, and still you have one body, you have body language, you have emotions in which you also want to let the people know. For instance, here in the Netherlands, where the history is different, like literally in the history books we don't have all the pages, let's say it like that, and still need to communicate what is pain, what is trauma, what is trauma in genes, how is it possible for, let's say, a Jan Willem to experience the same thing as Kapila.
Well, one thing I would say is it's not just about the trauma.
Right.
It's also about resistance, resilience. It's about joy. It's about how do we translate and transmit not just the historical trauma, but also the cultural power and beauty that has been preserved or reclaimed. And how do we then use... I don't know how it happens, to be honest, but there is a magic that does happen when all of this comes together, and we do have to fill in some of the gaps. We use a process called critical fabulation, because we don't have all the stories, and we don't have all the lived experiences, especially that come out of the individuals whose names reemerge or reappear in Sri Lanka and South Africa and the Netherlands. But there is something that does happen with the process, within the process, from all the makers, all the creatives who are bringing their histories, their cultural memories, their ancestral memory to and using their bodies and their voices and music to translate that. It's very powerful.
It is.
And you don't have to know every detail of the history for you to feel it and to experience it,
That
right?
is true.
And at the same time also, like when we create this, like there is also question raising. Why South African choreographer? Why Sri Lankan choreographer? Why Netherlands is doing that? This why question is actually giving you a lot of answers and a lot of like a thinking that to understand and to find out and to do your own research how it has
You have
happened.
to have some
So
curiosity.
it is also an education tool for the younger generation to understand why this docs project is so important, why they brought these two choreographers into that.
Right.
I think that is something that we have already given that.
Of course.
And then the conversation will start. When the conversation is starting, automatically they will look for these things, because always the history is going to be hidden, because there should be some sort of like a bubbles come up to realize, okay, there is something like that. We need to figure it out.
So what
know?
do you hope students take away from, like, after the experience of the performance? So what do you hope they take with them home?
I would like to think that it's important for us to get a deeper understanding, like historical understanding of what had happened and what connects us. Most importantly, also to see that it's possible to create and collaborate with other artists from different backgrounds, and how that can also inform and help you to grow. But at the same time, I think for society at large, we're looking for this reason and purpose for being integrated as society. But how do we do that without reflecting at the past? How do we create this ideal, this utopia of a future when we still are living in quite a colonial construct? So I think whatever emerges from the process, from the questions, from the conversations that we have after the show, I think for me is a lot more important than me giving my opinion on what I think people should take away, but more like, what do you take away?
True.
When you speak to someone after the show, how do you feel? What came up for you? What emerged for you?
Right.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it's also similar. I don't want to try to control the outcome for people, because everyone is going to have a different experience. But to feel something, if you leave feeling something or learning something about the world in which you are a part of, or history which you are also a part of, raising people's awareness that there are these intertwined and entangled histories that are still affecting us today, and what are the possibilities that this kind of collaboration can create for the future. I think that is the most exciting part, is that it opens up the doors for the new collaborations, new works that can emerge, new projects, new companies. That's the exciting part, is that it's a doorway that leads to something more.
I also think that it's quite important for us as makers of work like this. It's a big responsibility when you're telling the story. We're not just coming here to create art for the sake of art. We're coming to say things that other people, whether it's in government, might not be comfortable to say, so that we can help to make things better, to help to reflect on this quite complex history.
Right.
So I think it's important that those support that we do get from government, from people of influence, that they can actually go back and contribute to improving the lives of the people that's been affected by this history. So for me, we can do this performance and it can be beautiful, but it's also important to make practical changes in the lives of the people that's living the legacies of this colonial machine,
Right.
Yeah.
So why is the message, I'm asking the question, but I'm like, okay, I know why, but why is it important today? Why do we need to hear this now? Now.
Okay, I think it's very important for us, because when I compare to Sri Lanka and South Africa, Sri Lanka went through a 30 years of war. So when we did this research, actually I was asking myself as a creator, was this civil war also was a part of the colonization?
Why is this history and this message important today?
I think it's very important for the new generation to know what has happened, how it has happened, and how can we change it. Because through this production, actually, we are trying to raise a voice and to give some education towards the audience, as well as towards ourselves, as well as the artists that we are working with. So we start the conversation in a smaller scale. As Luke said, as an artist, we can raise a voice, but the decisions makers also have to come in the action.
Yeah, so because I have a specific question for you also. I'm sorry, but for Sri Lanka, what impact can you predict? Because I know a lot of things around the Netherlands and some of it from South Africa. But for you guys, I'm just wondering, like, what can you predict if it comes to impact making?
Yeah, it's like, the Sri Lanka had a 30 years of war. Then we had a major collapse from the political situation. Then we had the biggest collapse for the economical crisis. Now we have a new government. And the new government is quite young, but they're quite really trying their level best. But then a lot of things were destroyed by the recent landslides. And there was a biggest, like a storm came and on this landslide have created completely a catastrophe for Sri Lanka. So the government attention is to develop the infrastructure to, have a daily life routine back to normal. So in that sense, like, doing a project like this also, I think, will create a sort of like a dialogue where the government also can think what are the areas that they can also develop through the arts and culture. Because as an artist, what I believe is your culture is your food, and if you don't eat, of course you are dying. So in that sense, like at the moment, like for the moment, the government has forgotten about the food. The culture is not in their agenda, unfortunately. So doing this sort of like a project, I think they also will look at how that will impact on their development.
Yeah,
And culture is food.
Yeah,
That is
exactly.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes. I said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're starving.
That's a good one.
That's a good. That needs to be on a T-shirt.
Culture is food.
Yeah. You think so too?
No, I totally agree. I think it's beautifully said. I don't know if there's anything that I would add except to say that if people leave this experience as the audience moved, becoming more aware of the relationship between our cultures, the connectedness. We are more connected than we are divided. Then we have succeeded in opening doors for possible futures. What might that look like in creating new work? That's I think would be a successful project.
I have this feeling. I don't know. It must be right because, like in South Africa, resistance is actually part of your living.
It is.
In a way, like we had apartheid a few decennia back. How can you still learn from this project, and how can it be impactful for your home?
That is a powerful question, fully loaded question. But I think, the resistance is in our blood, It is there for us in the way we live. We also a lot of people with a lot of love. I think there are so many key figures within our indigenous South African history. Kritoa being a woman that was like standing up against the colony, and many others. The battle at Salt River 1510 is like that was like a big mark of resistance. So we've seen like through history that our people have overcome certain things, but obviously with the colony being formed, it's changed life and the trajectory of what it means to be indigenous even in South Africa. Today we are so divided. A lot of people are so divided. So doing this type of work is to also create that unity, is to bring people from the diaspora together as well, and not just the diaspora but the world, humanity, to bring us all together so that we can address these issues, and show the impact of how the work can also have healing. Healing is just as important as showing the trauma, the past, the resistance, the love. Healing is probably quite central to a lot of what we do.
Yeah, healing is important.
What he said.
Right. But thinking about our cultural field, Jennifer, I'm not supposed to laugh. So resistance isn't really in our genes. And I say our as in the kingdom, the Dutch kingdom, the Dutch kingdom in Europe. Do we have resistance as an instrument?
I think so. But
we do?
I think, but what has been central in a Dutch context has been only as it relates to World War II and resistance. That is a very sacred history that is very much protected, preserved, and amplified in that sense because we were seen as the victims and not the perpetrator. But when we go back in time and look at history through this colonial lens, or decolonial lens, then we shift our gaze, as it were. We have to look through a different prism. I use the term global south when I refer to people who are not white, not European, not above the Pyrenees Mountains, because what is Dutchness then? How do we define that? Who gets to identify as Dutch?
Clock it.
Because this has been a real ongoing debate about when we talk about Dutch society or Dutch history, it's usually meaning white Dutch,
Right.
not people who were generationally born. My family's been in the Netherlands since World War II, fought in World War II on the side of the Netherlands. So that is a really important question that we're asking about identity and belonging, that also I think our work stretches the boundaries for that.
True. Definitely. Ooh, a lot of T-shirts today.
Lots of T-shirts. Another thing that I wanted to add with regards to like support, this project wouldn't have been possible without support from funders,
Yes.
from local government, international funding bodies. So with what I said earlier, it's not to discredit the work that people are doing to make things better, but I do feel like there's more that needs to be done, and I will continue to say that, So when we think we've reached the limit of support that we need, there's more that can be done. Because if you look and you measure that to what was being extracted, not just in South Africa and Sri Lanka and other colonies, we will never be able to time is going to go on forever, and the amount of reparations is not even going to compare to what currently is being repaired, So it's not about creating this measuring stick all the time, but about actively pursuing to contribute to make things better, to create that sustainability, more opportunities, improve the lives of the people that's been affected by this history constantly.
Excellent.
And with these words, we've come to an end.
No.
Yeah, but I'll ask you. I have one more question. It's more like, of course, you do your research, you find out things. Some things are new, I can imagine. What are these things that you have found and you were like, huh?
How much more time we have? Because that's like a whole show by itself. Let me just say, as the research, the researcher for establishing the groundwork, I could not have done it without a lot of collaboration. So what is equally as important is collaborating with experts, historians, cultural historians in each of these places. So we have a community that we have really built that helps to inform the history and from different perspectives. Because what I also found interesting was in the process was learning, even for example when studying Sri Lanka, there are so many different points of view about what happened during the colonial times. And these historians don't always agree. And yet they both written volumes of work that speak to this history that now we have to make a choice. Or do we? Cannot we include these opposing views about this one place? So for me, what was most surprising to learn is that even when we're talking about, specific contexts in specific countries, that they're not always in agreement. Because who, in the sense, owns the past? Who exactly, when we talk about recorded history, from whose point of view did that come from? And there then lies who then gets to claim knowledge bearers. We don't often consider the history tellers, the griots, the oral historians, the cultural, historians that are not academic. So also taking knowledge from these so-called academic, but then who decides what's academic and what's not academic? So therein lies, for me, was the exciting challenge to hear all these different points of view and to not have to choose one.
Right.
That's the beauty of the arts, is that we are allowed to push the boundaries in ways that oftentimes political systems can't, or governments talking to each other that they can't. We can say things that are often not allowed in certain context, which sets us free. So
Yeah.
to me, that's the power of what this performing arts can do to change the world, to make it more just, to make there more equity or possibilities for the future artists.
I also hear like to give platform for all those different perspectives.
Yeah, and and I'm really careful about saying that we give something. We're not.
No,
but in the sense
as
that
artists,
we are space of becoming. Just literally, we've been asking ourselves, what is that?
Right.
Where does that space begin and where does it end?
Right.
Becoming what?
Becoming what?
Becoming what?
Has been the
Yeah.
question, and how do we then, curate an experience that we don't own the past, but yet we are here to claim a part of the past that has been willfully forgotten or ignored or just not known.
so the space of becoming, this space that we are creating, there's room for dialogue.
It's essential. Without the dialogue,
I think it's the new ship.
Is it-
Not from the colonization time. It's because at that time they were using the ship.
Right.
This is the new ship of communications, of connecting back again in the right intention.
I like that.
My-
Ooh,
T-shirts.
the new
whole collection.
T-shirts is excellent.
Thank you so
But
much.
also just to
Yeah.
like touch on that, I think the work is also an entry point into this. As Jennifer said earlier, we can't cover everything in 1 hour of
Yeah.
a production. The process is so dense information. You have to select what speaks most to you.
Yeah.
What do you feel is pertinent in this moment to address through performance. So we create the entry point with the work, and then the dialogue and the works that come from this work will continue and continue
Right.
for us to like expand to know more.
And archive.
And
That-
new archives,
New archive.
Yeah.
We need that.
love this.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so
so
much.
rich.
Yeah.
So
Great
important.
conversation.
And also, so, yeah.
And we're also having
Very
fun.
Yeah.
together.
Fun.
We are
Let's
having
not forget,
fun.
we're
Yeah,
having
yeah,
a
of
good
course.
time.
Joy.
Just
We are
exploring.
having great time.
Yeah, it's also a form
Yeah.
of resistance, right?
Yes,
Yeah, exactly.
joy.
Rest is resistance.
Rest, joy.
Joy.
Enjoy your
Happy.
off days. The work.
Abundance.
Yeah.
A lot. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Pleasure.
for your
Thank you
Thank
work.
you
very
for
much.
having
Thank
us.
you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Yes.
This is fun.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Sweet, man.
We did it.